My name's El Pavey, this is Brake Magazine and you're watching Mini Tip Monday. And today we're going to talk about riding in snow. I've got my trusty Stig-like character in Neil to help me out. He's going to be doing all our demos today. And last night we had a little bit of a dump of snow. It's still snowing now. And so we thought it was a great opportunity to go and figure out what is needed to ride an adventure bike safely in snowy conditions. So these are the best 7 tips we could come up with to make your snow riding experience that little bit more enjoyable. We don't get a lot of snow in the UK, so firstly, these tips aren't for countries that have lots and lots of snow. It's a very different experience riding on a couple of centimeters of snow on hard frozen ground to riding on snow with a really good base. Our first tip for riding in the snow is if you can avoid it, don't do it. Unless you're confident and you want to go out and push your riding ability, it's a difficult thing to do and it can be really nerve-wracking and it can be quite unpleasant if you fall off. If there's no requirement for you to get somewhere on your bike, maybe don't do it. However, on a dirt bike, riding in the snow can be incredibly good fun. The guys at Fort9 made a fantastic video about modifying bikes for riding in the snow by using paddle tires and lowering tire pressures and lots of other really cool things. They put loads of effort into that and we're not going to try and replicate it. When you start riding in the snow on an adventure bike, however, things really change. The weight of an adventure bike makes it quite difficult to ride in the snow. That weight pushes the bike around a lot. It asks for grip that simply isn't there a lot of the time. And the things that make an adventure bike hard to ride when it's really slippery, like on grass or wet chalk or in mud, are exacerbated hugely when we ride in the snow. This is at its worst when we're riding on the tarmac. Tarmac is obviously hard underneath and then you get a little dusting of snow on top and it makes for the slipperiest surface imaginable. When we go off-road, that's actually a little bit better. Things move around a little bit more and if you've got kind of a soft surface under the snow, it can actually be pretty fun. If, however, you do decide to go out in the snow, technique is everything. And more specifically, it's clutch control. Clutch control is basically your meter between your right hand, the engine, and the ground. And without good, smooth clutch control, you're not going to get anywhere very fast. When we say clutch control, we basically use the clutch and the torque of the engine to do all our movement going forwards. So when you're trying to pull away on snow on a big adventure bike, we basically leave the bike in gear, 0 throttle, and feed the clutch out until we're up to speed, until the clutch can come all the way out. If you try and apply throttle to that mix, you get spinning straight away and it's really, really difficult to control. Likewise, that process has to happen in reverse for slowing down. The clutch is our safety switch. It's the thing that takes the drive away, always. We try never to close the throttle without pulling the clutch in, and the same with braking. And we do this because it meters the amount of suspension dive you get when you close the throttle. If you just close the throttle, the forks will dive and you'll load up the front tire and then you're asking for grip that isn't there. Everything we do is about trying to avoid that. So whenever we make a mistake or we want to stop or slow down, the clutch comes in before we do anything else. Tip number 3 is to get up the gearbox as early as possible. The goal when you're riding in really slippery conditions, mud, clay, and snow, is to use the lowest part of the RPM as possible. You're always trying to be as gentle with the ground as possible so that you can get grip and keep the wheel turning. When a wheel is spinning, you're not going anywhere and you're not in a huge amount of control. So by going up the gearbox early and using tick over to keep us moving forwards, you get the most grip and you have the most control and you're the least likely to make a mistake. One of the most common things you see when people are nervous is that they put both feet out and ride along with the feet out like anchors. Now, unfortunately, this is really bad technique. Having your feet out dangling doesn't help in any way other than to drag you down and make you off balance. A much better technique is to make sure that you're always using your feet purposefully. So you're either using them to walk along and keep yourself moving and keep deliberate placement, which helps with your balance, or they're getting up onto the foot pegs and driving weight through the foot pegs and helping you control the bike. When we pull away, generally, if it's very slippery, we would walk along, get one foot onto the foot peg if we're a little bit unconfident, and use the other foot to keep walking, And then once we're up to speed and we're ready to change up to second gear and then third gear, we stand up. Even sitting down riding in the snow is a little bit of a liability. You don't have anywhere near as much control as you do when you're stood up. When we're stood up, we have to treat it like we're riding a really, really slippery, muddy track. Always the goal is to try and stay as loose as possible. It's easy to say this and difficult to achieve, but really the looser you are, the gentler you'll be with the bike and the better you'll deal with it moving around. Along those same lines of getting up on the foot pegs and trying our best to be in control is in choosing the line we're going to take. Unfortunately, with snow and adventure bikes, there doesn't seem to be a hard and fast rule about where the best line is. Sometimes it's in the more powdery snow where it's less compact, but what we found is if you're riding a little bit too slowly, the tires pack up with snow really, really badly, and then you end up with a snow on snow situation, which has almost no grip. Sometimes you find that a slightly packed snow works really well because the tires can push into it a little bit better, but it can go too far the other way and you end up with a scenario where the snow is so packed it's almost like ice. This is one of those situations where you have to kind of take things a little bit into your own hands and decide by testing. Ride a little bit on the powder, see how it feels, ride a bit on the more packed snow, see how it feels, and keep the speed nice and low so that you're safe, and even if you do make a mistake, it's not going to be a horrendously painful crash. One of the most common themes we came across when we started researching other people's ideas of riding in snow was that you shouldn't use the brakes. Now, as off-road riders, that's something we wholeheartedly disagree with. The brakes are there to be used, and how they work is decided by you. There is grip there to be used, and that means we can use the front brake, but the manner in which you brake and where you brake matter a lot. It's really important that you're smooth and progressive with the front brake, that you take your time and you choose where to do your braking. Choosing to do your braking on off-camber sections or as you get to the corner, or even when the bike is no longer upright and you're trying to turn, is not a great idea. Plan early, pick the good spots where it looks like there's lots of grip, and give yourself plenty of time. Riding in snow is a slippery affair, and if you rush it and you're aggressive with the controls, it will remind you that it's slippery. Tip number 6 is about paying attention to the ground that you're riding over. Snow is really pretty because it hides a lot of the things that we normally look at, but with that comes an element of danger that wasn't there before. Generally, you can't see what's underneath the snow. It hides frozen puddles and rocks and roots really, really well. So choosing your line, paying attention to what you're riding over, and keeping the speed down a little bit will keep you safe. Tip number 7 is to try lowering your tire pressures. This is a little bit of a gray area, but in theory, having a lower tire pressure really, really helps with making your bike have more grip. A lower tire pressure means you've got more surface area and more squidge, and it will grip better. However, especially with adventure bikes, it's a gray area because some tires in the adventure bike market are horrendous when they run at low tire pressures. They're not designed to be run at low tire pressures, and the carcasses and the flex of the tire feels horrific. A really good example of that is Metzeler's Karoo 3. It's a great tire, but it's designed to be used at 2.1 bar and above. And even when we've ridden in the sand or slippery conditions with it, lowering the tire pressures has not improved the way it feels or the grip it gets. And we think it's probably the same on the snow. If you're using another tire that is better for that, or you're riding a dual sport bike, hell, lower those tire pressures as much as you can get away with. On a dirt bike, you could easily go down to 0.5 bar if you're riding in conditions that aren't going to puncture the bike easily. Again, that's something that comes down to you testing it out in the conditions you're riding in on your own bike. Try it out and see what works best. Again, there's no hard and fast rule for this. And the last tip for our mini tip is to enjoy the hell out of it. Riding in the snow is so slippery and so ridiculous, especially on an adventure bike, that you can't not enjoy it. You have to embrace the fact that you're probably going to fall over at 0.5 miles an hour, and it's going to be hilarious. It's really easy to do spin turns and mess around and just enjoy it. It's beautiful outside today, the sun's shining and the ground's covered in snow. There's nothing not to like about this. And along those same lines, if you like this video, smash that like button for us, drop a comment down below, throw in any extra ideas you've got for tips. And lastly, remember, life's better when you're riding. do a donut.